Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole. It's another one of our congressional weekly chats. And boy, what an historic week this has been. Obviously, the week began with the inauguration of a new president. It was historic in and of itself. We all regret that that had to be done indoors because of the weather. That's the president's decision and prerogative. And I think he did it out of genuine concern of all the people in the crowd and how brutal the weather was. But it meant that if you were a member of Congress or prospective cabinet member or dignitary or what have you, obviously past presidents, you had the opportunity to do something that doesn't happen very often. That is actually witness an inauguration up close in the Capitol Rotunda. We were all, again, disappointed. People that traveled a long way didn't have an opportunity to actually attend the ceremony, although they certainly were watching it all over Washington, D.C. and around the country. I thought it was a great privilege for me personally just to be there. I've never been in a room with that many former presidents. Former President Clinton was there, former President Bush was there, former President Obama was there. Both current and now former President Biden obviously was there. And Trump himself was a former president who became again president again. I sat directly behind three speakers, all of whom are good friends of mine: former Speaker Gingrich, former Speaker Boehner, former Speaker McCarthy. That was a great privilege for me, and a lot of friends in the crowd. I couldn't have been prouder of watching Carrie Underwood perform as an Oklahoman with such grace and such poise, and frankly, because there was a little glitch in the program, she sort of got things moving again and didn't need the musical backup. Anybody with a voice like that can carry the day herself. Great thrill to see Lee Greenwood. We had wonderful prayers from Cardinal Dolan and from Mr. Graham, and it was just Franklin Graham. I'm sorry. It was just an amazing day, and I thought the president rose to the occasion. It was a typical Trump speech. It was bold. It was brassy. He let you know very directly what he thinks. Some people would agree. Some people would disagree. It was interesting to watch the reaction. Obviously, a lot of Democratic members there. I actually sat between two Democratic members. I thought they were very respectful. They didn't get up on their feet as many times as I did, but I wouldn't expect them to. There's not everything in the president's speech that they agree with, but they treated him with respect. And they treated the ceremony with respect. And it's a good thing to see members of both parties there, and presidents of both parties, former presidents of both parties there. I think it's just an important statement going forward. But I thought it went off extraordinarily well. But I will say this too: what a difference a different president makes. I mean, you can feel the energy in Washington, D.C., and I think you can see it in President Trump's actions. You may agree or disagree with some of his executive orders that he's issued, but it's pretty refreshing to see that much energy, and they clearly had a great plan, on everything from the border to energy to deregulation. Reversing some executive orders. That's the disadvantage of an executive order. By President Biden, restoring things like remain in Mexico, which adds to border security. It means if you're claiming asylum, you can't come into our country until that asylum claim has been proven. Ending things like catch and release, which means if we catch you and you've come in illegally, we're going to hold you. We're not going to release you with some mythical trial. I think you see already a difference in the border. I think it'll affect the flow of people that come. And again, these are things that the president ordered resumption of building the border wall. I think that's a pretty important thing. I think he's been vindicated on the importance of that barrier in terms of controlling the flow of people coming into the country illegally and the flow of drugs coming into the country illegally that have taken so many American lives. So I couldn't be more pleased with the actions the president's taking, and it has an effect on Congress too. One of the bills we wanted to pass last year was called the Lake and Riley bill. You'll remember it was a young woman tragically killed by an illegal, murdered by an illegal alien, brutal murder. This was legislation that would give both immigration officials, border control people, and local law enforcement more tools. If they find somebody that's here illegally and has a criminal background, they can move quickly to take them off the street. And in this case, the perpetrator, the murderer, had actually been arrested and released inside the United States. As a result, young woman of enormous promise is no longer with us. She's dead, and her family aggrieved, and people legitimately outraged. So, seeing the fact we couldn't pass it, we passed it through the House in the last Congress. But the Democrats literally wouldn't take it up in the Senate. This time around, we passed it in the House. We got significant Democratic support, which we didn't have too much before, but I think 48 Democrats voted for it. When it went to the Senate, 84 senators voted to hear the legislation. There's 53 Republicans, so a lot of Democrats, and 12 Democrats voted for final passage of the bill. So it was a genuinely bipartisan piece of legislation that Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats have just held up. Now that'll be the very first bill that President Trump signs into law, something that helps us deal with the border crisis that he solved when he was president, that President Biden made much worse, reignited really, and that now President Trump's doing the things to make our borders secure again. And I'm glad to see Congress is working with him to give him some tools. So very good week. In terms of me personally, as you know, I chair the House Appropriations Committee. We had our organizational meeting on Wednesday, and so we're off and running. New members are now on the committee. The committee assignments and subcommittee assignments are all complete. Hearings are underway. We're in negotiations about what are the top line for what are called the 25 bills, meaning 2025 fiscal year. Sadly, those should have been done last year. We pushed hard to get them done. We weren't able to do it. Amazingly, there's a new president in town, so all the negotiations are moving again. People want to get these things done so they can get on to the work. We're anxious. It'll take the president a while to see what his budget is, because our intention is to pretty closely follow what his recommendations are when we prepare the Republican budget for our committee. And I think the fact that our party is so much more unified with the president here and actively exercising power. And there's a palpable excitement on people want to work with him to achieve the objectives he laid out in the campaign. And we're certainly going to do everything on my committee to be supportive of the president and his vision of where America ought to go. The American people spoke in the last election. They gave us a rare privilege of having a president, House, and a Senate, all of the same party. And I think, at least on my side of the aisle, there's a lot of energy and a lot of hope and a lot of expectations that, hey, it may not be everything I want, or I may want something a little bit differently, but if this is where the president's going, we want to be supportive, we want to be helpful, we want to let him carry out what he ran on. And you're seeing that in the Senate. Obviously in the House, we don't have anything to do with the approval of cabinet members, and there's always some controversy around some of those. I was really pleased to see the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, be confirmed 99-0. Tells you what people on both sides of the aisle think of now Secretary Rubio. There's other exciting appointments coming up. I think particularly of some of my colleagues, people like Elise Stefanik, who's going to be a great representative at the United Nations. I don't think she's going to have much trouble. I think Doug Collins, who's a former member from Georgia, a good friend of mine, not going to have much trouble. So I'm seeing a lot of both former and current colleagues move into positions of enormous responsibility with President Trump, and I'm excited about that because I know these people, and I'm really comfortable that in those cases the president has made absolutely superb choices. I will say this too, I have a lot of confidence in our two United States senators. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, our junior senator, obviously has a close personal relationship with President Trump. James Lankford's a member of Senate leadership, obviously will be working closely with the president, and they have a voice in these nominations, and it makes a lot of difference. And I think Oklahoma can be very happy that it has the two senators it has, and they'll exercise the judgment they do. And look, I'm content to to watch them make these calls, because I know they take them very seriously. They're meeting with all the nominees. They're involved in the hearings. I thought Senator Mullen really acquitted himself well in the recent hearing for the prospective Secretary of Defense. But, again, they both are just doing a great job for the state, and I'm proud of them because they're helping the president. They're helping him get his team put into place with record speed. So, if you think the House of Representatives is slow, just watch the Senate for a while. I mean, they are slow, but they are moving. They're working on weekends. They're doing things in an unusual fashion to try and facilitate, the creation of the administration and give the president the tools he needs to administer the government and the advisors and help he wants to make, these important decisions with, and to implement the decisions he makes. So, again, pretty exciting on all this. I would expect you're going to see this pace of rapid change and executive activity. You could even see it in the speeches. No disrespect to former President Biden, but he hasn't been as visible or active. On Inauguration Day, President Trump gave 6 different speeches to different groups. You can agree with him or not, but you've got to be reassured of the energy. It's hard for me to believe the guy is 78 years old. I mentioned in a previous broadcast, I sat next to him for 3 hours at a dinner out in Mar-a-Lago where he had all the chairmen of the committees in. There were about 17 of us. And I mean, he just, dominated the room for 3 hours. There wasn't any question about it. And I see now this same energy. And you see accessibility to the press, which I think, again, the American people need to see. So he gave, I think, 2 press conferences the first or second day he was in office. And watch one of his press conferences. I mean, they're entertaining, if nothing else, no matter what you think about him, but you're not going to say he's ducking the questions or, being coached. He's not reading note cards. He's just firing off. This is what he thinks. This is what he believes. This is what he's going to try and do. This is when he's going to try and do it by. I mean, sometimes as an old political guy, I go, my gosh, Mr. President, give yourself a little time, give yourself a little room. But I think there's a sense of urgency about this presidency. He knows he can only be there 4 years. It's his second term. He knows what he's doing. You can tell the difference between the first Trump administration and this one in terms of just the speed with which the nominees were named and rolled out, the sheer number of executive orders he issued as opposed to the first time, when I think it was 5 or 6, was certainly a good opening, but nothing like this. And look, the guy's just not afraid of anything. I think we've seen that over the last year, and with the 2 tragic assassination attempts, really 3, because we foiled one where the Iranians tried to do it before the person that was willing to do it. Fortunately, the FBI caught him before they were actually engaged in the act. So, the president's out there in the public performing with, some risk. That's just sad that anybody would have to worry about that, let alone the President of the United States. And again, I have enormous respect for the men and women that protect our presidents, regardless of party. But there's no question this president is a big target. And so, but it doesn't seem to stop him. It doesn't seem to slow him down. He's certainly not cowering in the White House or whatever. I'm pleased he said he's going to head out to California in the next few days to get a first-hand look at what's going on. I would ask all of you to think about our friends and fellow Americans in California. I know there's always some criticism. I think some of it's very legitimate about forest management and reservoirs, and Congress is going to look at those kind of things. But in the end, these are Americans, and they're in a disaster situation, and we're going to help them. We helped people in North Carolina and the entire Southeast in a disaster relief bill last December. We're going to do that again to help our friends and our fellow Americans in California. We may well put some prudent provisions in there to try and make sure we don't have to come do this again anytime soon by making sure that the state discharges its duty. But again, in the end, These are just individual people caught in a tragic situation. They're Americans. They participated in helping other Americans. The California delegation certainly supported disaster relief for the Southeast, even though that's a red area. I'm sure that we'll support disaster relief for a blue area because we're all Americans. And I think the president going out to a state that he did not carry in any of his 3 elections, that we know some of his principal political critics hold prominent positions in, everything from the governor to the former speaker to others, and that's fine. That's American politics. But he's going out there to take a first-hand look, and I think he'll come back with a pretty good handle on the situation. And again, I never saw him refuse help to anybody the first time he was president. I think he'll certainly help Americans the second time. But I also never saw him be silly about not making changes if they were necessary to try and protect people from another disaster like this. And I suspect he'll have some pretty bold proposals, and I think Congress will and certainly should look at them very, very seriously, and where they can be supportive. So I'm excited. You probably can sense that I'm usually a pretty laid-back guy, but in this case, I just feel like the country is in better hands. I feel like decisions are being made that are clear, that are transparent, that are decisive. You can agree with them or not. Nobody's going to agree with all of them. But again, you can feel the energy, at the White House, and you can feel it, frankly, emanating out from there to the other branches of government. That's a good thing. And I will tell you, the mood in Washington is much different than it was in either 2017 or 2021. There's certainly sharp partisan differences. They're going to be there in the weeks ahead. But I think people are more hopeful. I think they're more optimistic. I think they feel better about this. And I think the president he's probably more popular today than he's ever been if you look at the polling. He's certainly got the energy, and I think Americans genuinely, want him to succeed because they, know that his success will be good for the country. So again, we'll see what happens. It's Congress. We're meant to be a check and a balance, but right now, I think certainly on the Republican side of the aisle, we want to see the president have an opportunity to put his programs into effect, his policies into effect, and to fulfill the commitments and the promises he made to the American people over the course of his campaign. And we're going to do everything we can individually and collectively on the Republican side of the aisle in Congress to try and make sure that those things that he made commitments on, he's able to deliver on. I think we have that obligation. Again, we'll always look after our state. We'll always look after our district. We'll always, defend our principles. But I always remember this president carried our state 3 times. He carried every county in it 3 times. That means he carried every county in my district 3 times. So he's got the support broadly of the people that I represent, certainly of the people of Oklahoma, and he's going to have probably one of his most reliable congressional delegations in our state. I think our members of the House and our senators are going to be working with the president to try and move the country forward. We're not going to be working against him. So again, we'll be talking a lot. I think it's going to be a very interesting opening number of weeks and months for a new president, and we're anxious to be back regularly chatting with you about him and letting you know what ways we've been working together, with the president and where we can across the aisle to move the country forward. So in the meantime, stay tuned because I think you're going to have a lot to watch with this president. Good luck, God bless, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.